What's up, everyone? Welcome to Hot Sauce Sports. I'm Terry Tam, and I'm happy to be joined by Joseph Robert, aka the Fantasy Football Counselor. Joe, thanks for coming on, buddy. How are you, man?
Thanks for having me on. You got me at a busy time, too. It's fantasy football season, full flow fantasy. I'm in the zone, man. And so is Council Nation. I'm excited to be on, man. Love what you're doing here.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're happy to have you on again. I mean, I've been following your account for a long time. So for us, it's been, it's been like I look at it and I'm always trying to get new details and little things that I can do, and and it's just crazy to me that it's like we're actually gonna have football this year, and I'm not even in fantasy mode yet, but I'm slowly getting into that mode, and I love drafting. Drafting is probably the best part of fantasy.
Yeah, man, you got to get in the mode. I'm in it all year round. So it's weird because when I was a casual guy, I don't know how often you play. Maybe you're casual or you play, I used to be like, okay, it's like Christmas time, but now it's like I do it every day. I'm not saying it's boring now, but it's not as exciting because I do it every day, So
Yeah. It's the thing about fantasy football is like, if you're not into it all the time, if you're not talking about it, your group chat needs to stay active all year. You kind of lose like the information that you get. Like I've lost it. Like I'm the commissioner in one of my leagues, but we've kind of like slowly all worked at different places. We're not as close anymore, but we're still in the league together. So it's like it's tough to stay involved. But I try to as much as I can. I follow your account. I follow as I watch NFL Network all the time. So I try to stay as active as possible and in tune as possible.
Well, you got to stay away from the mainstream. The mainstream aren't going to do you any favors. If you want cookie cutter advice, follow the mainstream. If you want to win your league, follow the counselor.
The thing is I'm a Cowboys fan, so I always get Cowboys news. So I know pretty much who to draft from the Cowboys, but it's the other teams that I don't know. So it's like, and people always ask me, it's like, because I run a sports blog, it's like, oh, do you do fantasy football? I say, of course I do. Who doesn't do fantasy football? But at the end of the day, what I look at is they always ask me, oh, where's the best place to pick? And I have no idea. So I say usually 6 because you're 6 or 7. You're in the middle. You're not waiting too long on opposite ends. So my question to you is, where's the best place to draft?
Well, this is a question I get asked all the time, and the simple answer to this is you should be prepared to draft from every position. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it sounds a little cliche or whatever, but listen, I personally like going first this year because a lot of people go CMC, but I'm going Saquon Barkley here. I'm rolling dice. I think his ceiling's higher, but I'm saying you can still go CMC. That's fine. 1 and 2, it's fine. But you go first, you wait your 24 picks in a 12-person league, then you go back to back. And I still think there's a ton of value. I'm implementing the robust RB strategy, so I could probably go Saquon, Gurley, and maybe even David Johnson in third because I'm looking for a bounce back season out of David Johnson.
So you like Gurley this year?
I like him. I think he's going to be solid. The Falcons believe in him. They're going to run him to the ground, man. I'm telling you.
Maybe not like him next year, but this year for sure, I think, right?
Yeah.
I have Saquon in my keeper league, so I'm keeping Saquon this year. We have a rule in our keeper league where I'm keeping. We have to keep 1 player per position, 3 players. So I'm keeping Saquon. I had Derrick Henry last year as well, so I had Saquon and Derrick Henry. So I'm trading Derrick Henry. Somebody offered me Amari Cooper. Is that a good trade?
No, man. You're going to trade Henry for Cooper straight?
Well, it's because I can't keep the guy. I can't.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
He's going into the draft, so I might as well get some value for him. And all my receivers are garbage. My other receivers.
So what would the other option? Could you just drop Derrick Henry?
I would drop him. He goes into the draft, but I lose him at that point. So I might as well get value. And I don't have a receiver that's better than Cooper.
I don't trust Cooper. I try to get somebody else. The problem with Cooper is they brought in CeeDee Lamb. Now, Amari Cooper had 119 targets last year. When I'm looking at an ace wide receiver, I need 140, 150 targets, and a guy's going to get a ton of volume. He could have a safe year, but when you got receivers that are equally as good, probably even better in CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, who could respectively be wide receiver ones on their own potentially, 3 wide receiver ones on a team. I don't like it, man. I don't like it.
That's the part. I was telling you before we started the show, I'm a Cowboys fan, right? So for me, it's like I look at it and I'm excited to see all 3 of them do well. I mean, Gallup, I liked his progression last year. Cooper, I mean, yeah, you said 119 targets, did well. I mean, some games not so much. And I love CeeDee Lamb, the pick. I mean, it's such a Cowboys pick to pick the best player available in the draft, right? So I feel like CeeDee Lamb will take a lot away from Amari Cooper. So I get that. So I'll see what I can get for Derrick Henry. I feel like there's going to be a lot of buyers, but nobody's willing to give up, really. I mean, it's tough in my league.
Try to get someone else. Try to get a Julio Adams because he's a first-round talent, right? You can't just give away a guy that's first round talent for a guy that's third round talent, right?
Okay, so Cooper's a third round talent. It's good to know.
At least, yeah,
Okay,
average ADP, third, fourth round, even, right? Depends on your league, how many people are in it.
12.
Yeah, so yeah, I wouldn't. That's not fair.
And that's the standard, right? 12 teams.
Yeah,
When I'm also in a league where we have 14 teams, and we have IDP in that league, so defensive players, and we've lowered it this year. Last year, so we had at one point we had one linebacker, one defensive back, one defensive lineman, and then two defensive positions. So on top of that, so we're drafting 5 defensive players. The value to those guys is pretty low unless you're getting a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence or a guy who's going to get you a lot of just fantasy points, right? Just like tackles and knockdowns and
right.
pat downs and things like that. So who would be the best IDP player available if you had, let's say, if you had the first pick of all the IDP players?
That's tough. I hate IDP. I don't do IDP, but I'd go Aaron Donald, probably a guy that's going to get some work, someone like that. But the problem with IDP is you got your league, you draft the right quarterback, the right wide receivers, your entire team goes off. Then you get a guy who's a corner on the opposing team in a certain particular week, and they get 2 interceptions. They run one back, and they get a bunch more, picks or swats or whatever you want. It depends on how your IDP is scored.
Yeah.
And they just have this boom anomaly game, and it just screws your entire week. I tried IDP. I hate it because there isn't really much skill in drafting it. Now, some people say, well, it's more skill, Joe, because defensive players. Not really, because again, like I said, you'll have that player that has that one big game. He does nothing for the entire season. There's no consistency. With Zeke, I know a little bit more in regards to what consistency I'm going to get. I'm going to get around 15 to 20 targets, attempts as a floor, right? I'm going to expect around 20 points as a floor for Zeke, predicated on that volume. Defensive player, you have no idea week to week. It's very volatile. So it'll really screw your weeks week in, week out. And that's why I don't do them.
It's the IDP stuff. I'm not a fan of it either, but it's all friends, old friends. So I stay in the league just to stay,
right.
Just to stay in touch with these guys. But at the end of the day, I've never won that league. I think I've made the playoffs once in like 7 years in that league because it's my second league. Now, for a guy like me, who's kind of like a casual, you're asking before, I am a casual fantasy football guy. Sorry. I wanted to ask you for my other keeper. I'm keeping Tom Brady. Is he a good keeper this year?
I think he's going to do well. I think he's going to finish top 10. He's got the receiving options. Gronkowski coming back. Pass catching running backs in the backfield, including Ronald Jones, Keyshawn Vaughn. He's got arguably the 2 best receivers in the game next to Julio and Calvin. I like him. I think he's going to be safe and solid.
So the thing, Tom Brady for me is I've had him for a couple of years, and he's not the best fantasy quarterback. He hasn't been the best fantasy quarterback for a couple of years. I mean, obviously he'll have good games here and there, but Tom Brady he's the reason why he's picked so high every year is because of who he is, right? Not necessarily what he's going to do fantasy wise. But I decided to keep him this year for the reasons that you said, and the reason is that he has weapons. And Mike Evans to me is probably one of the most underrated receivers, and I think he'll finish top 5 this year in the NFL. And fantasy.
See, we don't know. It's going to be him or Godwin. Now, Godwin being drafted in the second round, very high average draft position. And then you got Evans in 3. Only one of them will really thrive. So a lot of people say Evans, a lot of people say Godwin. I think Godwin. It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting, and I like what they've built. I mean, I think that they're going to do well. When I talk about if I look at, we were supposed to have my co-host on, Alex, and I wanted to ask him because he's a Ravens fan, and I wanted to compare the Cowboys and the Ravens fantasy-wise. If you had to take the Ravens versus the Cowboys fantasy, if you take those are 2 your fantasy teams, who would beat the other one? Who would be better?
I'm going to go with that's tough because I'm going to go Cowboys because when you look at quarterback, obviously Lamar gets the edge there, had a pinnacle season last year. I'm looking for a decline out of him. I mean, to replicate those type of numbers, very hard to do. I mean, Dak always consistent at fantasy in regards to quarterback position, although his ADP went high this year. When you look at running backs, clear cut, obviously you got to go with Zeke there. They brought in Dobbins, who's a rookie, who's going to dive into Ingram's attempts. Ingram had 200 attempts last year, 202. Lamar runs the ball, so you're not going to get a lot of volume in regards to running back. And wide receivers, Lamar just doesn't throw that much. I mean, and then tight end, I got to give it to Andrews there at tight end. So it's almost like down the middle, but I'm going to give the edge to the Cowboys.
So what are you a Colts fan, I assume?
Yes.
So what do you think about the Colts this year? Who's the best fantasy pick?
Love T.Y. Hilton, love Pittman. Jonathan Taylor's going to take that job. I'm telling you, it's going to be exciting when you're watching the Colts.
So you like Michael Pittman this year, Junior?
I do.
Yeah. I mean, he looks great. I mean, there was a lot of those videos online where he looked like he was running lazy routes and stuff.
Yeah,
But I
yeah, I
think
posted that. I was joking around. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I figured you were. I figured you were. I wanted to ask you. There's a lot of rookies drafted this year, quarterback wise. Is there any quarterback that's worth drafting? Any rookie quarterback that's worth drafting as a starter, not a backup?
You know what? When it comes to quarterbacks, I never take a risk. I always go for the ace quarterback, the guy that's going to give me production. And as a backup, I get another guy that I feel will give me production. The only guy I see really taking off this year right out of the gate is Burrow. He's got the weapons to do so. But again, you're looking at a suspect offense with the Bengals, rookies coming in. I'm not excited about any rookie quarterback this season.
So that's a good point because in my league is I usually when I usually draft I usually draft with I draft an ace quarterback if I have Tom Brady my keeper, and then I'll look at his bye week, and then I'll draft a quarterback that has the best matchup on that bye week. So example, let's say Joe Burrow was playing against I'm trying to think of another garbage team, but let's say they're playing against the Colts.
Washington.
I'm kidding. Let's say they're playing the Washington football team.
Yeah.
I'll draft Joe Burrow just for that week. You know what I mean? And if he goes down, or whatever happens. So that's how I usually draft. Is that a good? Is that a good way of thinking? Is that a good method?
No, that's called the YOLO method. You only live once. Live for the moment. No, I'm more of an investment kind of guy. I want a guy that's going to produce every week. I think of it as like I draft a quarterback to my backup, thinking of him as a guy that's going to be potentially the starter, if that makes sense. I don't look
Okay.
at him as a backup. I look at him as this guy could start.
The way I see it is that I mean that's a good point. I can't disagree with you there. You're the counselor, not me. And I haven't won a league in like 4 years. So what the fuck do I know what I'm talking about? But the way I see it is that he's going to be my backup. So you don't see it as a backup. You see it kind of as an investment. You'll draft a guy, and let's say you have Tom Brady in this scenario. You have Tom Brady. You'll draft maybe a Phillip Rivers later on if he's not taken in the 4th, 5th round because you know he'll be able to produce. And if you get a trade offer, then you'll be able to maybe swap him for somebody else.
Well, yeah, you basically want to cover lack of performance. So one year I had Drew Brees and I had Matt Ryan, but Drew Brees had a 40-point game. Next week he shit the bed and basically got a 7-point game. I didn't like the volatility game in, game out, so I started Matt Ryan over him that year. So
Okay.
his lack of performance is another reason I get a backup in case for some reason lack of performance, injury, that type of thing, right?
So last question before I let you go, you've already given us your time, is that when I look at defensive in my 14 team league, I like to draft 3 defenses because you gotta hoard them. We're 14 teams, right? So you gotta make sure. So what I'll do is I'll draft 2 and I'll pick up 1, and then I'll play matchups with all 3. What's the best scenario to do it in either a 12 team or a 14 team? How to draft your defensive teams?
Just defense and special teams, or just individual defense?
No, sorry, defensive special teams. Yeah.
With defenses, I don't put a lot of weight in them. That's the only time I might draft on ADP. So many things change in regards to defense because of the draft. A lot of defenses change because rookies come in. Those defenses change at the NFL draft. So by the time the season starts, that defense is going to look really different than it did last year. I literally wait near the end, and if my defense isn't performing the team that I picked up, I'll stream a matchup defense that week. But yeah, when it comes to defenses, as long as I can get 10 points, as long as my defense is not giving me negative points, I'm good. That's where I'm not that picky because defense, again, a lot of volatility even with defense. And I find a lot of leagues are getting rid of defenses and kickers in leagues. They're just kind of pesty.
Well, the kickers, I mean, I've never been a big on kicker. I mean, I see the advantage to having a good kicker. I won't be the first to draft a kicker, but if I see one go, I'll be the next one to draft a kicker. That's the way I see it. I don't want to be the last one to get a kicker. I also don't want to be the first one.
Do that with defenses. Don't do it with kickers. Kicker is the one you can literally wait on the last spot. With defense, you might want to get a top 10, ideally ADP defense. So as soon as you start seeing some defense come off the board, maybe consider it then. But with kickers, doesn't matter, man.
I appreciate you taking the time, Joe. So where can everybody find you?
Yeah, guys, head on over to thefantasyfootballcounselor.com or Fantasy Football Counselor on Instagram. If you do fantasy and you're on Instagram, you probably know who I am. I appreciate everybody that follows Council Nation and get the 16-round draft solution at thefantasyfootballcouncil.com. 16-round draft solution is the game changer. Scrap the draft kits and cheat sheets. I do video training. I give you all the optimal players to draft in each round, everything, breakers, sleepers, everything in video training. The future has arrived. No more cheat sheets. get 16 rounds, guys.
I'm gonna buy it too. I think I saw it was $25, $24.99,
Yep.
right? Yeah, $24.99. I'm gonna be getting it too. Clearly, I have no idea what I'm talking about, so I'll be getting in the package for sure. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you taking the
Thank
time,
you.
man. You're part of the Hot Sauce Nation now. You'll be nominated for Guest of the Year in 2020. We'll send you that belt if you win it. We'll see what happens.
Perfect. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure, buddy. Thanks.